So I'm Addy Ford, and as you can tell, I'm clinging on dearly to that picture up there. It may be a little bit old, but I quite like it, so we'll stick with it. And thank you to Gay, Nat, the IAV team. It's great to be back in person at MeasureUp. It's great to be invited again. Thank you. I'm sure the logo on the sign over there has nothing to do with it either, but it's nice to be back here. Now, quite conscious that you've heard quite a lot of messages today and this morning about what's breaking and going wrong, and I think what Paul Sinkinson said earlier about there's no such thing as wear out. I think we're going to stick with that. So you will hear a few terms again and again, and for those playing buzzword bingo, such as Sam Redfern, I know he likes that game, you will definitely hear the words first-party data, you will definitely hear cookie, crumble, silver bullet, and measurement framework, just to warn you, so before you think I'm repeating it. Sorry? Yeah, definitely. If you've got your cards ready, then we're off. So we're going to split the session in two. So I'm going to talk a little bit around what sort of Meta is helping clients with, some of the context of those flows of information, and then I'm delighted to have Mo from Canva who's going to join us and actually give us some real-world advice on how to bring this together in that framework/platform. So I'll kick off with what you already know. So, people are opting out, there are policy changes, and there are platforms changing the way things are possible. So what that means is that how that data is fueling advertising is changing, and what that means, in short, is that we absolutely have to change. There's been a lot of points today saying we can't wait around, we have to try new things. This isn't just something that's going to fix, it has to be completely ripped up and rethought about. So I'm going to take you through a bit of a journey in terms of just a consumer journey with some data flows in it, and just to give you an idea on how much these knock-on effects have. I'm not going to labour the points, you pretty much know all this and you've heard of lots of people today. I was going to walk down there, but I've only got the LinkedIn platform. So we'll start with the person visiting the website interacting with lots of pages. Cookies are signed, they're accepted, that information is sent to various publishers. Platforms who receive that then use machine learning to use that data to determine the best ad to serve to someone. There's an auction, the highest value ad is then shown to that person, and the ad interactions that are generated are then used to improve that machine learning. Purchase could be made, and then it's passed back in for measurement and reporting. Great, that's how the world was, currently is to some extent still working. Now, if we change that, which we know is changing, so the data cannot be sent reliably, increasingly that's going to be more of a problem, the knock-on effects are pretty serious. The optimization models have to work in a different way. They have to work a little bit harder. They have to rethink what kind of signals they're going to be using. And measurement requires us to think that you can't reconcile that. So we've got to think differently around measurement as well. So, and certainly at Meta, we're rethinking how we deliver on those ad delivery, driving conversions and measuring impact, and how we balance up both consumer privacy needs, but also the needs for personalization and ad effectiveness as well. So with that in mind, path to purchase and all that kind of stuff, I get this question a lot. And the answer is well, the question is attribution dead? And the answer is yes and no. And I wish it was yes. And I wish it was yes for one reason, that my sales team are constantly asking me to fix their clients' attribution models to say Meta gets more. And I can see Naomi looking at me now. But the answer is a bit of both, okay? So, and the reason it's no is that there's definitely a need, right? There's definitely a need for real-time, digital measurement, highlighting optimizations, accountability, all that kind of stuff. Now, Mo's going to come on and argue this a bit more in a minute. But the reason I say yes is because that multi-touch thing seems a little bit too far-fetched and too big a challenge for me, not without some radical changes around privacy-enhancing technologies and how we share data. But in its current form, I think that attribution, multi-touch attribution, is going to be pretty damn hard. And I've just taken this really oversimplified example here. Not even a real example, but you can see from an iOS perspective, someone views an ad, someone views some paid content on a browser in Chrome, there's an iOS click, there's a conversion on a Mac later on. Whichever permutation you want to work from this, it's really simple that you've got 4 different types of data with varying different levels of aggregation, which make it very, very hard to stitch together and make any form of attribution model. So this is desk research. I have to make that very clear. This is not meta numbers. This was me playing around for this presentation, just looking at some stats and trying to figure out how much of the information that we rely on or have relied on is actually not usable anymore. So this is all based off Apple's ATT, so the App Transparency opt-in. Total devices in Australia, I think, just from one stat, I looked at about 24 million, and I've just split that out. I have kept the decimal places in there, so my team doesn't have a go at me for rounding areas. errors, sorry. So what you can see here is a split between Android and iOS, no surprise there, about 53-47, but the opt-out on average is about 75% according to these sources here. That will vary by vertical and by client and app, but that's a pretty large chunk of current information that is opted out from that. If in the future, sounds like, and when it happens, another operating system decides to do something similar, you can see there the chunk of black that now is opted out and can't be tracked. So it's a big problem and making attribution very, very challenging. Now, you heard a lot about people switching to first-party data. It's really important, and I totally agree with that. This is another piece of bad desk research I did. Again, not anything worthy of photographing, but I just looked at CDP spend in the US over the last few years, and you can see it's gone up and to the right. People are making lots of money out of customer data platforms, which is great, which means people are using them, people are collecting the data and using it within their marketing. So yay for that. But I think we're now at a point where we've got to start thinking about how we pay back a little bit more on that investment. So a lot of money has gone into that. A lot of tech vendors are doing well out of it. But how do we increase the value we're getting from this first-party data as we acquire it? And the best thing about first-party data, you can always tell the difference between the slides that I've got that are mine versus the ones that the company gives me. And this is definitely one of mine. But the best thing about first-party data is coverage for me. And there's two sides to the coverage. It's breadth, it's offline and online, right? So we're seeing transactions wherever they happen. We talked about omnichannel earlier. It's opted in and opted out. It's your data. The other thing is depth. And this is a really interesting one as well, around some of those actions that happen after the event, after that cookie might fire. A good example of that would be a subscription going from a free joining then to paid subscription in a couple of weeks later. Like, you can get that depth of data, you've got it, and then how you use it, whether it be for measurement or ads, which I'll come on to in a moment, is then how you're going to drive more value from it. But first-party data is great because it gives you this coverage. So this is a measurement conference, so I'm going to stick with the first one a little bit more. But it really does, it is your opportunity. This coverage does, allow you to unlock growth here. So one way is obviously incrementality. So what we can do now is measure causal uplifts of ads. We've always been able to do it. We've been striving hard for it at Meta. We've had to rethink it, which I'll come on to in a moment. But this can be done with PII and without PII. And this is really how we unlock that incremental growth that we all want to find. It's through incremental measurement, knowing not what is actually driving an incremental return from your ads, not what was just driving the ads anyway. The other way is powering ads, and then I should have put force multiplier in my buzzwords at the beginning, but like really empower machine learning as a force multiplier for that first-party data. And I'm not going to touch too much on that because this isn't an ad delivery conference. So I'm just going to go into the incrementality one quickly. Well, we had to rethink this. Who in the audience has heard of our conversion lift product? Not enough of you. Noted for my team at the back. Yeah. All right. So we typically measure things at Meta conversions. We measure it with a sort of experimental design, test versus control. We look at the difference and we measure the uplift. And that's how we think it's the best way to measure our platform and how you get that answer of incremental ROI or that kind of stuff. But we had to rethink that because previously we were using that with a cookie, with a pixel as we called it. And so we've rebuilt our conversion lift product. So the main things here are we're respecting the privacy, but we're also enabling good measurement. And we're de-identifying the data and we're aggregating it. And I'll talk roughly through how that now works for you. So same methodology, audience, targeted, split into test versus control by randomization, ads shown to one group, ads not shown to the other group. The main thing is here is that the advertiser loads their first-party data into the platform securely via an API. Scary word at the moment. But what that enables us to do is split that audience by opt-in and opt-out. So we know from the ATT side of things who's opted in and who's opted out, and we're able to treat them differently as such. We don't need the information of people at the opt-out level. We just need the number of conversions. On the opt-in level, again, we just need the number of conversions. We can combine those together. We don't know who the people are. We don't need to, but we've got the number of conversions split by test and control, and then we can look at that uplift. And that's what we've built now, and that's what a lot of clients are now leveraging as a way of getting back to measuring incrementality, but making sure they've got privacy ensured there. Another thing we're looking at is building more open source techniques as well. And so this is a really good one that we've built around GeoLift, or we call GeoLift. So this is around geographic incrementality. So again, focusing on that incremental measurement. The idea with it being open source is it's reproducible, but the key difference is, and I'm old enough in this country, lived here long enough to test New South Wales versus Vic, is, and that's not a good idea, right? But the latest advances are in synthetic controls, really finding those matches and using a lot of data to find those match pairs so you can do a really robust piece of measurement. So this is a completely free tool. It's out there. I apologise for the US map. I can't quite do that much PowerPoint, unfortunately. But the way this works is that, as you would expect, objectives are defined with historic data is then loaded into this tool. We can then find the matches of pairs based on previous transactions history in those areas, and then it spits out essentially some geographic reasons to target and not to target, which will be our test and control, and then it can be measured as an uplift. So taking what was a bit of an old technique, but now kind of make it a lot more modern, and obviously very much privacy secured on that one. Why do we like this one? Look, it's grounded in incrementality. And if you don't have PII, it's a great way of actually measuring uplifts as well. It's end-to-end, as I said. You're using the historic data to then choose the postcodes or regions, and then you're using it to then also measure as well. It's pretty flexible. I just talked about one use case, but it could be cross-pub easily. It's resilient, as I said. This is measurement that won't crumble, and it's open source, so people can use it, build on top of it, and it's out there. I'm not going to go into the ads too much, but I will touch on this point here, which is around the sort of using that coverage of first-party data to power the ads and that force multiplier. What we're talking about here really is, don't just stop at finding your first-party data in an ad platform. You've really got to think about how you leverage that machine learning to then find high-potential, high-profit audiences that you can't currently see as well. So how do you use that data to empower it? You've then got to step up a level as well and think about those volume driving efficiencies as well that are going to drive, as Paul was saying earlier, we can keep the ROI high, but the volume's down, but we've got to be able to find that sort of sweet spot as well. And that's pretty much what I want people to realise, is that there is a lot more value in first-party data than we're probably taking advantage of at the moment. So don't just settle with retention strategies. Don't just settle with we use it for insights. You're only really realising a fraction of its value. And do start thinking about profitable incremental sales, performance growth through accurate measurement, et cetera, and unlocking more value. So that's some of the stuff that I said isn't going to break in the near future. One of the things that, there we go, there's for the bingo, there's this no silver bullet one now. And this is what I'm going to bring Mo on stage in just a moment, is how do you bring this together? So you've heard lots of things mentioned today around MMMs. I've just talked about two incrementality measurement solutions there. How do you bring it together? And you need that framework or platform to bring it together, which is quite a daunting task. So our clever people in the US and Deloitte have just released this, and it's available to download. I'm not going to go through it in too much detail, but it is a really helpful resource on starting what this measurement platform, etc., would look like. They've called it Measurement 360, and they've identified 6 steps to do that. Some of them are quite obvious, you'd think, like defining your objectives to gain alignment, but really taking the time to think about your consumer journey. Where is your marketing trying to influence? What are the behaviours you're trying to influence? And then, pretty logically stepping through and going, reviewing your current measurement framework. Does it cover those touch points on the consumer journey you're trying to influence? Do you have gaps? Calling out those gaps, understanding what they are. Is the measurement that you're using actually future-proof? Will it break and create gaps? You need to have that honest assessment of what's going on. First-party data I've touched on pretty clearly there around the importance of it. And then you start bringing in, number 4, you start bringing in new measurement methodologies. That might be reimagining how you're currently using certain measurement. So MMM, you might get a little bit more granular with it, or it might be bringing in completely different techniques as well that you want to explore a bit more. But you just only at that point do you start bringing them in and evaluating them. The test and learn one's an interesting one to me. Everyone talks about a test and learn culture. Do you really want to be testing Q4? I don't know. Do you really want to be testing when you could spend a lot of money on not learning a great deal? So I think having a really solid test and learn approach about how you kind of mitigate some of that risk, or what are some of those new strategies, how do you get learnings that you can then scale, I think is a hugely important one. And the final one, which is really, really important, but incredibly dull by the sound of it, is triangulating and calibrating continuously. So really trying to take all the data inputs you've got, across the different solutions and trying to understand them so you can do more of an apples and apples comparison to make sure that you're making those decisions on the full data set. So that's it from me. Mo, do you want to join me? Excellent.
Do you want to do questions now for yourself, or should we join them up?
Join them up.
Because they're wondering about mics as well.
Yep. This one works. Got
I
one.
just want to store the stage.
This one works too. There you go. You are not.
Clearly user error. I've got my piece of paper.
Oh, good. We're very prepared then.
So thank you for joining us and welcome to MeasureUp.
Thank you. Very excited to be here.
If you see any phones coming up, let me know, and then we'll shower those people because I know this is post-lunch.
Oh, of course, of course. No, it's going to be riveting, team.
It will be. All right, so just describe a little bit about your role at Canva, what you do, and the best bit about your job.
Oh, let me start with the best bit of my job. I have the most incredible team. A few of them are sitting over there. I look around pretty much every morning and am totally shocked at the complete geniuses I work with. What I'm going to be talking a lot about today is definitely not my work. I'm steering the ship, but they have built the ship. They are sailing the ship and doing all of the really hard work. So my name's Mo. I lead the marketing data team at Canva, which is now a 30-person team. It was one when I started nearly 4 years ago now. So we have been on a really big learning about marketing measurement, and a lot of what we do has completely changed, which we're going to get stuck into.
Excellent. Right, first question. Is attribution dead?
Funnily enough, we actually had a really nerdy data conference on Saturday, and we had a debate on this exact topic. I think the more important question is, was it ever fit for purpose? And you're talking to someone who started their career at an attribution agency. I have been involved in building many, many attribution models and also helped build Canva's in-house multi-touch attribution model. And it's taken me many years of trying to claw against what's going on in the industry to realize that it kind of was broken in the first place. And that doesn't mean that it doesn't potentially have some uses, but for example, not good at brand measurement. It's actually really awful at that. And I think we've just kind of gotten into the stage where we've ignored that because it's the tool that we had. And I didn't think at this point of my career I would still be working in marketing analytics, but I am. I'm actually loving it more than ever because the fact that we're moving towards a cookieless world makes measurement even more exciting. The techniques that we're actually starting to use now are what we should have been thinking about all along. And obviously Andy's talked a lot about experimentation, which is something that is really a really strong part of our measurement framework, in addition to our media mix model and some other methods. But it's just a broken system, essentially. And I can definitely get on a soapbox and talk about the biases that are built into it or the data that it doesn't capture. But, we've spent a lot of time already today talking about that.
So it's not dead or it is dead?
That's a great question.
Is it revivable?
It's on life support at the hospital right now, I would say. I can speak for what we're doing at Canva. And our intent is over the next year to actually deprecate our multi-touch attribution model, which people find very scary. There are many marketers, as you can imagine, at Canva that can be quite daunting. And the truth of the matter is there are things from, I guess, a reporting angle that we're still working through how we address. There are definitely things from the user behavior side that attribution gives us. For example, does the channel that you sign up from affect how you use the product downstream? And so we're really trying to be forward-leaning and think about how we still answer some of those questions as a business without necessarily having the model that we've always thought was the silver bullet.
And the measurement conference on a Saturday?
Oh, it's really fun. You get all the true believers, real data nerds. Yeah.
Put me down for the next one. All right, so we're going to go into this concept of a measurement platform. I think that's what you guys describe it, or you've heard it mentioned today as a measurement framework or a system, all those kind of things. Now, I'd imagine to most that feels quite an overwhelming concept of starting that. What are some of the first steps that you guys took at Canva in terms of beginning that journey?
Yeah, that's a good one. So firstly, if you want to move towards having some kind of measurement, sometimes I call it platform, sometimes I call it suite. Platform is obviously a word that's used a lot in marketing technology. You need to dedicate resources to it. So until we basically went down this path, all of our analysts that were working on things like multi-touch attribution were doing it on the side in tandem to their everyday job, doing analysis and reporting for marketers. And what we realized was if we wanted to fundamentally shift the way we do measurement, we actually need a dedicated team to do that. And so through much finagling, I managed to convince Sam, who's sitting over there, to join and lead our first ever measurement team so that we have dedicated resources. The second piece was really starting to pull together the different bits. If you look around your business, there probably are already many different measurement tools that you're using. And that could be from, say, like in-channel measurement tools to different survey data that you have to some type of attribution model. And the first step is to sit back and look at what you have and how they can complement each other. We have gotten to a point where we've decided there is no one tool that tells us the answer to every question. Our platform is really about using a combination of different tools, and each tool we turn to ask the most relevant question.
I won't mention that you poached Sam from Meta. But,
yeah, sorry about that one.
All right, so you touched there on multiple methods, solutions. How do you go about selecting which one for what task and for what person is asking, I guess?
That is a very tricky question. It really comes down to the KPIs. What is the best method to measure that KPI? Now, I briefly mentioned that we have rolled out a media mix model, and so we use that obviously for measurement of a lot of our channels. But for example, for brand, we've decided, yes, we're still going to look at brand using our media mix model, but for where we are as a company right now with wanting to grow awareness of Canva and what we do, we've decided that that's going to basically be a secondary KPI. Our primary KPI is still about awareness. And we have our good partners, Kantar in the audience, who we work with on that. So brand measurement is definitely a different piece of the puzzle for us.
I'm trying to think whether... Well, you've touched on MMM there, so let's go into that one a little bit more then, I guess. Yeah, what role is MMM playing in your business? Obviously, it covers a lot more, but it is a slightly different dynamic to say more causal, experimental design things, some of the stuff I was just talking about there. What is the role of MMM in your company, and then how do you, I guess, integrate it with other techniques?
So we're pretty new on our MMM journey. It launched this year, which is pretty exciting, and we're rolling it out. As you imagine, Canva's got a global presence, so we do have a model that's rolling out for each country. Basically, it's about measuring incremental return on ad spend, and that's been a huge topic for us, is moving beyond just return on ad spend and focusing on incrementality. I guess the bit that is most exciting or interesting is how we also pair that with the experimentation that we're doing. So in tandem to running our MMM, we're also running a series of geo experiments, like holdout tests, and testing different tactics, and basically use the output of those experiments to recalibrate our MMM. So MMM gives us the broad strokes of what we should be doing. If we have uncertainty or something doesn't seem quite right, that's where we use our experimentation to drill in further, and basically the experiment results then feed back in.
I feel like you may have contributed to that Deloitte paper. This feels pretty similar. I guess this concept of a source of truth, right? It sounds like there isn't one.
Nope.
But I'm guessing that someone senior in your business wants one. So how do you go around sort of shifting from, say, a single attribution report to multiple measurement methods feeding into, either a suite of reports or a single dash, or how have you gone through that?
That's pretty much what I spent all of my job doing. It has been an education journey for us because, like I said, and this is the case for most businesses, you have an attribution model, it spits out one report, everyone thinks they can compare one channel to another, and what we're really striving for is a a series of tools or a platform that can be used to complement each other. And so a lot of my energy is really focused on how do we make the recommendations that come out of that really clear so that we're not getting conflicting messaging, because that's obviously that's the scenario we want to avoid. Canva, as you can imagine, is a highly visual company. And so a lot of what we do is pulling together these disparate data sources and putting it into something really digestible for our leadership team with very clear recommendations. And one of the strategies we've used, for example, is product experimentation. So our leadership team have a really great understanding of experimentation in product, because that's a technique they've been using for years to build Canva. And so we really tapped into that analogy and explained how we're then able to do experimentation in marketing so that we can increase their confidence when they're making basically budget decisions.
So there is one final deck that goes up to the top, but it's got some smarts written into it.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, right? Is there can be multiple tools, but it's really about strong communication about the recommendations that is the most important. And we also work with a lot of our partners, Meta including, to make sure that what we do, say for in-channel testing, also complements our roadmap, because we want to make sure that ultimately they're getting one lot of recommendations when it comes to large budget recommendations.
Okay, just staying on that one a little bit more then. So in terms of the senior management and the cadence at which they receive this information, if you've got MMM versus attribution versus experiments you're using for calibrating, what is the cadence that they receive this information? How often do they need it? How often do you provide it? How often do you think they ask for it but they don't need it?
I don't know. Yeah, I think it's so dependent on the stakeholder, right? So for example, we catch up with our CMO fortnightly and go through results. What we've tended to do with some of the other leadership team is when we have something really interesting or that's really going to shape our strategy, or we had a case last week where a test result really challenged an assumption that we'd had in the business for a long time, we do one-off, more ad hoc type sessions with them to be this is what we found and this is how we think it can inform our planning for 2023, and these are the factors you need to consider. So it really does depend on the stakeholder, and some stakeholders are going to want more information. I was just talking over lunch about how my old CEO loved to get a spreadsheet. I would not do that to some of my current leadership team because they're not spreadsheet people. So it's really about knowing your stakeholder and making sure that you have the right cadence that works for them. The summary is, if they're asking you for information, you're probably not updating them enough.
Good point. Good point. I can rattle off some more questions, or I'm happy to open it up wherever JJ's gone. There he is. Oh, same place he was. I mean, if there aren't any questions, I can make some more up.
Okay, go for it. There's actually, they're all kind for you.
Oh.
That's a lie. What will replace the multi-channel attribution model for Canva?
That is still a work in progress. I don't know any companies that have totally nailed this yet. And so we have multiple design documents and very strong opinions flying around the company about exactly what that should look like. I think the reality is that we do know that we need some type of reporting layer that I guess looks and feels more like what an attribution world is, because the output that you get from a media mix model is very, very different. So part of it is educating our stakeholders on this is different, we're going in a different direction, but also there are levels of granularity that they're still going to want to see. And I will definitely let everyone know when we figure out the exact perfect solution.
Please do. Please do.
No more on slide 8.
Okay.
Anything from the audience?
Yep.
James here from Suncorp. Are you doing much in the clean rooms at the moment? I know Meta have advanced analytics and Google Ads Data Hub as a solution for some of your MTA or MMM type incremental uplifts.
I assume that's for me. Yep. Yes, yes. We're, I wouldn't say we're early in the stage, but it's definitely something that's really important to us to invest further in. I think the thing personally that is really exciting about the methods that we're using is they are more privacy first. Like Andy was talking about in his presentation, like when you're doing some of this experimentation, we don't care if it's Joe Bob or Sam, I don't know.
Not Redfern.
Not Redfern. You know, like ultimately we want to measure the impact, and clean rooms is like the next wave that's going to hit the industry about how we do things in a more privacy compliant way, which I am all for.
Do you have any tales to tell around experimentation as a high growth company? You know, no doubt you've tried a few things, but what's the appetite for it now, and how's that going?
Oh, a tales.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Come on, I want to know about the failures.
I was going to say,
that's what you learn, right?
What's gone wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I guess I don't think of them as failures.
You win or you learn.
Because, yeah, you win or you learn, which is such a corny thing, but I actually said it to someone on my team yesterday. I think the thing that I've personally really liked is that the marketers themselves are really excited and really invested in this direction that we're going. I mean, KL, who actually leads our Facebook marketing, has been like on my case about this for years already. So like he's super pumped. He's like, Mo, I want to measure incrementality. Help me do that. What can we do? And they're all really receptive to the messaging. I do genuinely believe like we've done a good job of bringing marketers on that journey because they need to be part of the process. Like you kind of can't come to them and be like, and here's an experiment result that says this about your channel, without having them in the room helping design the experiment. Like you want them to be bought in. And we're actually like starting to move to a model where we can encourage our marketers to do more experimentation, because it's basically a way to access extra budget of like, if we do experimentation and we get, you know, proof of concept, then we're going to invest more in it. And that's, you know, that's another way to incentivize them as well.
But how's it work with the bean counters and CFOs if it doesn't go well?
If it does or it doesn't? Like I said, I think it's a learning. Like we have made some decisions to pull budget back from some channels and tactics based on our experiment results. And those have been very big budget decisions. But a part of our strategy is then how do we reinvest that budget into a channel that's performing better or a tactic that's performing better. And I do think it's also really important. One of the things we've been trying to communicate pretty strongly is like, there isn't a bad channel. It's, we haven't figured out the right way to use it if it's not performing well. And I think that's a really important message to come from the data team of like, not, the money's gonna go to this channel or that channel. It's about, you know, how do we best optimize that channel so that we're getting the best incremental return on ad spend.
I got one, sorry.
Keep going.
Well, I guess as a very creative company, so you're coming from an analytical lens, and we've seen today, you know, the importance of creative. Have you got a secret sauce to working out what creative's working for you beyond standard sort of media analytics, marketing analytics?
Yeah, creative testing is tough. Tough. We're definitely, it's a space that we've spent probably the last like year or two working on more. And actually in 2023, we have a lot more in that space that's coming. I won't go a heap into that, but yeah, it's funny actually. I said to someone the other day in the team who does a lot of work on creative testing, I'm like, where's that data point about 50% of ad effectiveness coming from?
MeasureUp every year.
Yeah. So yeah, MeasureUp. I was like that. You know, I feel like that number's like burnt into my head. So to date, when it comes to our measurement platform, creative testing has been a small part of it. But as we move into next year, it's going to be significantly bigger.
Great. Can't wait to see that. We'll be back next year.
Oh, good.
We can do double measurement conference next year.
Final question. You've gone from 1 to 30 in a short amount of time. I'm assuming next year's going to have a bit more growth in the analytics team as well. What's the big project? What's the hiring focus? What are you going to crack in 2023?
Well, do you know what? I'm going to tell you the thing that's keeping me up at night at the moment, which, yeah, I mean, take from it what you will. I actually, from a measurement perspective, I think we have come phenomenally far and are doing a really good job. The bit that's probably my focus for the next 12 months, other than having a small human, is really about our machine learning efforts. So out of the 30, we have 4 machine learning engineers. We're really invested in how do we have the best possible optimization signal for all the models that we're building, and that has been the focus this year. But then for next year, it's actually about taking a step back, and rather than looking at whether this model V2 is slightly better than V1, it's actually about, like, should we be working on this machine learning problem or that machine learning problem? And I don't think we're at a place yet where we have a good understanding of that cost of maintaining our machine learning models and where our efforts are best spent. So for me, that's the next big focus.
Awesome. Yeah, well, I think growing a human is probably a bit tougher, but, you know.
I don't know, machine learning engineers are tough too.
Fair. Awesome. Well, thank you. We're bang on time, I think. So thank you for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me.